0968. And then the meeting ID is 832-3352-0188. Is 832-3352-0188. And the passcode is 223980. Okay, that's okay, not a problem. It's on the agenda. If he's got a copy of the agenda, it's written right on the agenda. Okay. Yep. The ID number 0188. Yep, and then there's a passcode, which is 223980. Okay, yep, bye.
Were you able to give her the phone number, Earl?
Yeah, I sure was, but I can't get back to my screen with everybody.
We could see you fine.
You can? Yeah.
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 This is weird. I can't figure out why I can't get the screen back, but
Upper right-hand corner.
there we go. There we
Yeah.
go. Figured it out. Okay. He's going to call in, or Barbara is, and then hand him the phone, I think.
You unmuted. You can mute or unmute.
All right, Rick, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can. For the first time, I wasn't able to get any volume from you guys. But
Okay.
I'm here now.
All right, terrific. All right, glad to have you. All right,
Okay, good.
Gary's about ready to start his staff report on item number 4 on the agenda. Go ahead,
All right.
Gary.
Looks like we're squared away. So I'll just repeat a little bit of what I was saying about this. So this minor subdivision is pretty straightforward. We've got, an existing lot with 2 existing units on it. And they just want to put a line right down the middle of the 2 units, basically, so that each residential unit can be on its own lot. And as typically occurs with any subdivision, there's certain improvements that have to be constructed. This particular property doesn't have like a paved driveway or any paved parking spaces. And the driveway aprons in the city right-of-way are not ADA compliant. So there's a few improvements that need to occur for this subdivision, and I'll discuss that a little more when I get into staff comments. So as Chair Eddie noted, we're recommending that the Planning Commission find this project to be categorically exempt per the California Environmental Quality Act. And this is the standard exemption that's used for division of properties into 4 or fewer parcels when certain specifications can be met. And as noted in the staff report, this project meets those specifications. Since the project is in conformance with the general plan and municipal code, there's no variances or exceptions required or being requested. All services and access to these parcels to local standards are available. The units are already there. And the parcel was not involved in the division of a larger parcel within the previous 2 years. And then lastly, the parcel does not have an average slope greater than 20%. So for those reasons, we're recommending that you adopt the CEQA exemption for the project. As typically occurs, we sent out referrals to all the various city departments, including the city manager, public works, building official, city engineer, and the volunteer fire district as well. Really, the only substantial comments came from the city engineer. and basically saying that all improvements need to be reviewed and approved by the city engineer, as typically happens for subdivision improvements. That paved driveways are required for vehicular access to both parcels, and the driveways have to be constructed to the city's design specifications. That the driveway aprons within the public right-of-way for each parcel must be ADA compliant. There's a few recommendations that were provided as well. As you'll see on proposed parcel 1, the driveway kind of takes an interesting turn to avoid a utility pole. And so because of that, it looks like when folks are entering and exiting the site, there's a potential to run into the side of the house. So the city engineer is recommending that a bollard or other protective structure be installed to protect the northeast corner of the residence from collision. And then there was a few other items that were recommended by the surveyor who reviewed the map. And all of this stuff is included as conditions of approval or informational notes where there are recommendations that aren't necessarily enforceable by the city. So as noted in the staff report, we're finding that the project is consistent with both the general plan and the zoning code. And there's a table in the staff report that goes development standard by development standard, identifying what's proposed by the project versus what the actual city standard is. And as shown in that table, all the various standards would be met, including the provision of off-street parking. The only exception being, it doesn't note on the tentative parcel map whether the parking was going to be paved or dustless and durable. So we've included the relevant code section in that requirement as a condition of approval. So under the section on subdivision code compliance, we note that the tentative parcel map was reviewed by city staff and that it was found to be in compliance with the city's municipal code and the Subdivision Map Act, if obviously meeting the conditions of approval that were recommended for the project. And then of course, we list the relevant code sections, noting that, the Planning Commission does have discretion to require additional improvements or study if they think that's appropriate. Typically in the past that hasn't been done, but that isn't within the discretion of the Planning Commission. And then the staff report basically finishes up identifying the requirements for filing and recording of a parcel map, having to be prepared by a engineer, a professional land surveyor, and then the requirement for a subdivision improvement agreement for the improvements that are required. So with that, the staff recommendation is that if the Planning Commission wishes to approve this project, then specific findings that it's consistent with the general plan, municipal code, and subdivision map act should be made. And that the conditions of approval listed at the end of the staff report should be adopted. And so along with the staff report, it includes, let me find it real quick, Resolution 4/2021, which contains the findings for approval of the project if that's what the Planning Commission so wishes to do. So that concludes my staff report for this project.
Thank you, Gary. Direct this, any comments from my fellow commissioners? Any questions of the report that Gary gave and the documentation that he gave us?
I have one, and I tend to bring this up fairly often. I guess it's one of my themes. Was there any discussion about extending the sidewalk from the tennis courts to the front of those two parcels, considering there is sidewalk in front of the tennis court, and that would be a natural connection there to increase sidewalk?
Yeah, the city engineer conducted a site visit of the property and determined that sidewalk would not be suitable at that location. There were various reasons that was identified. Several of them is because there's several pieces of infrastructure in the area where the sidewalk would be. You've got a fire hydrant, stop sign, all these various things that have been the utility poles. So, they always have to think about, ADA compliance in that regard. Additionally, the city's sidewalk ordinance doesn't trigger sidewalk typically in this case. Now, of course, the Plan Commission has within their discretion to ask for something like that. But in the city engineer's opinion, it's not appropriate to construct sidewalk in front of this property. And I think they noted that there is some sidewalk across the street, which would provide pedestrian access.
All right,
In regards to that, Gary, it looks like on the residence or lot, which would be lot number 1, is that there's a walkway from the house out to all the way to the street. Is that correct?
Yeah, let me look at that real quick.
looks like it.
It looks like it's concrete. I can't tell from at my
Yeah,
advanced age.
Yeah, there is a paved walkway up to the front property line, and I
Okay,
guess, yes,
but
up
not
to
on,
the,
not on lot 2, nothing on lot 2.
Nope.
It's on site between the garage and the house, right?
let's see. So on lot 2, you're referring to, I mean, it's basically right on the property
Yeah,
line.
it's right on the property, right?
Yeah.
So the
but-
entrance to the resident, which it must be in that, right on the property line there.
Yeah, let me look at that real quick.
I can see the driveway to the garage, of course. Yeah, I would imagine there'd be a stoop or something, but,
Yeah, it looks like, I'm just looking at Google Earth Street View that,
oh, okay.
you have basically kind of a driveway apron and then, a grassy compacted gravel area of a couple feet till you get to the front porch kind of deck that leads to the front door
Okay,
of proposed
okay.
parcel 2.
All right. Very good. Any other questions or comments, commissioners?
Yeah, so I had a question about number 7, the easement, for the sanitary sewer easement.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
So can you clarify that a little, Gary? So the city is recommending an easement through the property for the sanitary sewer and not from the property line to the connection? I was a little confused by that. Like, isn't it the owner's responsibility from the connection to the house?
Yeah, but I think there's a portion, see, it's not like it's right of way or something. That's actual city property, so it's not the public right of way. So I think what they're looking is from the property line of proposed parcel 1 to where it meets the sewer main, they would be looking for an easement.
Okay, so what's called out on that that map by Points West, sheet 1 of 1, the sanitary sewer line that goes to parcel 001, that's a lateral, right? Obviously.
Yeah, it's a lateral coming off of the main, but the main isn't like in the street, like the public right of way. It's on a piece of city-owned property that has zoning, that kind of thing. So because that utility infrastructure goes into somebody else's property, being the city's property, they're recommending that the city grant them an easement to have their sewer lateral on city property like that.
So the easement would go through 00, well, it doesn't need to go through 001 because that's city property, but it would go through 012 to where? That's what I was confused about. I just don't understand the boundary.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the tentative parcel map and you look at the southwest corner of the residence on proposed parcel 1, obviously you can see that sewer line heading
Yep.
onto the city property.
Right.
So that's an unusual situation to have a sewer main on a piece of city-owned property like that. Typically, the sewer mains are, in the street, in the public right of way. So because of that situation, the surveyor that reviewed this thought it was appropriate that the city grant them an easement to have their lateral go onto a piece of city-owned property like that.
Okay, now I understand. I was reading it reverse.
Yeah.
So, okay, I got it.
Yeah. It's the portion of the land on the city property, what he's talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, and
That makes
because because we can't require the applicant to require the city to give them an easement, it's an informational note, it's a recommendation. So it's really more for the city, like, hey, you know, you have a property owner that has a lateral going onto your property, you should probably grant them an easement for that.
Yeah,
And where's the sanitary sewer for parcel 2?
goes out to the street.
I think that might just go out to the street.
Okay.
Yeah, it's actually.
Oh,
not-
that's the SSCO. They show a clean out, but so it must
Yeah.
just be right there. Okay. Gotcha.
Okay, any other questions, commissioners? Okay, if not, I'll entertain a motion on the resolution 4-2021 for approval or not.
I'll move. I so move.
All right. Do I hear a second for approval on resolution 4-2021?
I'll second it.
All right, very good. All right, I'll take it to a vote. All in favor, say aye or wave.
Aye.
Okay, no nays, so the resolution is approved as such, and there we go. All right, thank you.
And then, as the commissioners are aware, there's other steps in the subdivision
Oh, yeah.
process. So there will be kind of more administrative items that will come to you in the future as they're preparing a parcel map, subdivision improvement agreement, things like that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Gary. All right, very good. Next item on the agenda has to do with the planning commission action. Site plan approval on the on city property for the development of the bike park on the north side of Taylor Way in Powers Creek District. No address at this time. The project is category exempt also from CEQA for the same reason as previously under class 32 though. Guideline exemption projects categorized in infill development when certain criteria can be met. All right, Gary, your report, please.
All right, let me just finish my notes from the prior item. Okay. Cool. So yeah, as Chair Eddie noted, the city of Blue Lake is proposing development of a bike park on city-owned property. This is that kind of triangular piece towards the end of Taylor Way and on the north side of Taylor Way. So as shown in the site plan that was provided, noted in the staff report, this is looking at developing a dirt pump track, a paved pump track, kids dirt track, a few trail improvements, and then some other accessory improvements, drinking fountain, bathroom, bike repair station, lighting, wood perimeter fence, benches, and utility improvements. And as I noted, there is a conceptual site plan that's attached to the staff report that illustrates what's being proposed here. So as Chair Eddie noted, we're recommending that this item also be found to be categorically exempt per CEQA guidelines. And this is actually section 15332. This is the infill exemption, which is commonly used in city limits for projects. And there's a couple criteria that a project has to meet in order to qualify for the infill exemption. One, as usual, is consistent with the general plan and municipal code. It has to be in city limits, which obviously it is, on a property that is less than 5 acres. This overall property or parcel is about 3 acres, and the project footprint's even less. That the site does not contain habitat for rare, threatened, or endangered species. It's basically a field with fill and native and non-native grasses. So there's not a particularly important habitat for species on this site. And then that the project would not result in significant impacts related to traffic, noise, air quality, or water quality. There's a potential for some minor impacts. A lot of them would be addressed through the performance standards of the opportunity zone. So that's considered to be, not a major issue. And then lastly, that the site can be served by all required utilities and public services. And there are utilities basically available adjacent to the site. There's obviously some additional lines that are proposed as part of this project, but it's all pretty much there. We're not needing to put in huge main lines or things like that. So as typically occurs, referrals were sent out to the various city departments. And really the main comments were received from the city engineer and the local tribes. So city engineer addressed drainage, says it needs to be addressed in the final design grading plan, and then also to keep the proposed wooden fence a little farther away from the sewer lift station. And that's all being included as conditions of approval. And then the local tribes responded just recommending an inadvertent discovery protocol. In other words, if cultural or archaeological resources are found, that you have to halt construction, notify the tribes and others, and investigate the find. And then lastly, they also did ask that the Blue Lake Rancheria Tribal Historic Preservation Office be notified in advance of construction, so that they have the option to do monitoring of ground disturbing activity if they would like to. So those recommendations from the tribes have also been included as conditions of approval for the project. So as far as general plan consistency, there's a lot of general plan policies that talk about allowing recreational facilities, open space, parks, all that type of stuff throughout the city. And specifically, we updated the land use element in, this year to include policies related to the Powers Creek district in that regard. So the project is consistent with the policies that are in the general plan. Zoning ordinance compliance. This was one of the first opportunities to go through the development standards in the opportunity zone and apply them to a project. So you'll see we're listing what the development standards are for each item, whether it be setbacks, building coverage, building height, off-street parking, landscaping, etc. And then discussing the project's compliance with that. And as you'll see in the staff report, we're finding that this project is consistent with the various development standards. At some point in the future, the city would be developing, or with its partners, developing a landscape plan, which the city planner would have to review and approve. And that would have to occur per the municipal code requirements for landscaping. And then, as we note in the off-street parking section, there's really no specific parking requirements for outdoor recreational uses like this. Currently, a lot of folks use the trail and they just park along Taylor Way. And so that's in essence what would happen here in the interim until some common off-street parking areas are developed as part of the projects that are proposed to happen in this area north of Taylor Way. So for that reason, we believe there's adequate parking for this facility. In the staff report, it notes requirements for site plan approval. There's certain principles to be followed that the Planning Commission should be considering when reviewing this type of application. And it covers all the various aspects of site design, as well as potential impacts of the project as well. So with that, city staff is recommending approval of this project and recommending that the Planning Commission make specific findings that the project's consistent with the general plan and municipal code. And of course, the conditions of approval from the various comments from the city engineer and tribes and other standard conditions of approval are recommended for adoption for the project. And included with the staff report is Resolution 5, 2021, which contains the findings for approval of the project, if that's what the Planning Commission chooses to do. So that concludes my staff report for this item. And I'm sure Mandy and the Parks and Rec Director and others probably have some things to add to the staff report for this item.
Yeah, please do. Trevor, welcome. Let us know what you have to say. And by the way, our new Park and Rec Director here, Trevor, welcome to the other commission. You betcha.
I appreciate it. So yeah, I've been working with Mandy and consulting with Charles and Tim and some of the other local guys that are the experts on the matter. I'm a bit more of a recreation economist. I do event planning and things, but they are the actual, meat and potatoes of the course install. So I'll probably defer to Charles on this. They've been getting me up to speed on the project, but looks like we're in the almost into the building phases if everything goes according to plan.
Charles, would you like to comment?
So, yeah, we had a meeting today and we were talking, and hopefully Mandy can help us with this, but probably one of the first things that we need to look at is if this is approved, can we actually get dirt set on the property and get it covered up? It's hard to construct this time of year because of winter, but we may have an opportunity to get the soils we need, the fill soils, to actually do the pump track and the bike park jump system probably sooner than later is my understanding. So from what I'm hearing. So as far as everything that's in your report, I haven't got to see everything that's in this report yet. Definitely I want to look at all the recommendations and everything that Gary was sharing with us and share that with the rest of the team, because those are all things that we will need to address and make sure are in place prior to doing anything.
All right, Mandy?
Yeah, so I want to thank the commission for seeing this through. I know you haven't approved it yet, so I don't want to jump the process, but I did want to recognize Charlie. I don't know if you guys have met Charlie previously or remember, it's been a while, but Charlie is a big influence in the community when it comes to youth sports and activities, especially anything with wheels. He's part of Humboldt Skate Collective, probably is Humboldt Skate Collective in many ways, and has been very committed to helping Blue Lake get this type of activity for the youth in our community. And we're very, very happy to have him as part of our working group. And he brings a lot of experience and capacity and professionalism to the project. And he's worked through a lot of issues with other communities on building skate parks and now moving into bike parks. So he's a real good resource for us as well, as a community that's never done this before, to learn from previous and prior experience and really look at building something that'll be what we think is going to be a regional destination. This is, it's not just a bike pump track for locals and for the kids, although it is that, but it's also a regional feature that the city of Blue Lake is going to be able to market on a host of levels and really help us with this kind of forward movement into recreation economy. So I just wanted to thank Charlie for all the work that he's done behind the scenes. He's already starting on fundraising and going out and sourcing materials. So we have gone a little bit past in our planning process, not having all of our approvals yet, but we are hopeful that Planning Commission will support this resolution and move this forward. And it sounds like everyone's really ready to hit the ground running, and it's going to be a really fun project. So.
All right, thank you. It looks like we have a couple other guests here on the call, and would they like to speak to this? I'm assuming they're here for this agenda item. That'd be Emily and the other person. Any comments? Okay.
So Emily is our economic development planner, and I don't know if you've all had a chance to meet her as well.
Okay.
She's also worked for our Parks and Recreation department for a couple of years, and is now our economic development planner, and we're super excited to have her as well. And her background is in recreation and business, and so it's really exciting. Her and Trevor have a lot of crossover kind of areas of expertise and opportunity as we start to blend recreation with economic development. So we have two really enthusiastic and knowledgeable folks now that are kind of able to kind of jump into these projects and lead kind of our forward charge. So we're excited to have both of them, and they're going to be the dynamic duo for sure.
Hi there. I just had to get my microphone on. I was just going to say I'm in high support of getting this bike park developed. I really think it'd be a great addition to our industrial park area. I know that in the future, we're looking at possibly doing an RV park and campground, and I think it would be a great feature along with that development. And I think with the fundraising and the community support behind it, it'd be a great addition for kids, safe after school kind of activity, and a lot of connections could be made with other organizations to utilize that facility. But thanks again, Mandy, for the introduction as well. And that's all I had to chime in.
All right, thank you, Emily.
Of
Appreciate it.
course.
All right, commissioners, it looks like, and correct me if I'm wrong, I can't tell the difference between the draft sketch from the previous meeting to this one. Looks like the same, which is fine. No comment in regards to that. Just curious, I looked to see if there was any changes between the two, and it looks like the same drawing. So the concept is still basically the same from that standpoint. Commissioners, any questions, comments, concerns?
This is Rick Platts. Can you hear me? Oh. That's not so.
You got your phone on? No, we can't hear him.
Richard, unmute your phone.
There you go.
Yeah.
Mute your microphone and unmute your phone.
Unmute your phone.
Oh.
The host would like you to unmute your microphone. You can press *6 to unmute.
Wow.
We're having fun here.
I feel like we're
No,
like
I
at a
don't
Michael
know.
Jet concert or something.
That's
Okay.
Cat TV.
Unmute your computer.
I have no
Wow.
idea what's going on.
You got to turn one of them on.
Oh, yeah, turn one of the either. Yeah. Now,
There you
now
go.
talk. Use your phone. Go
There
ahead.
you go.
Yeah, but you can't hear me.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I only had one thing that I had a question on the second page of the staff report that at the end of the first paragraph, or the site's characteristic history, it had a sentence in there: vehicular activity for the site is currently off of the Powers Creek District Trail, which is the only used by for emergency and maintenance activities. Is that for construction, or is that going to be? Are there going to be cars running on the people who are walking along on the trail?
I can address that one since I wrote the staff report. Thanks for the question, Rick. That's referring to current conditions. So right now, that trail functions as a emergency access road for the fire department. It's also used by Public Works for various maintenance activities on the city-owned property. So all that is identifying current conditions. There's no proposal for the trail to be used in any way beyond that in the future or as part of this project.
It'll
right,
remain
thank
an emergency access though. Correct?
Yes, that's what it was originally designed for and later incorporated into the city's trail system. But
I got you.
yes,
Okay.
so it would continue to function for emergency access.
Very good. Okay, thank you. Any other
That was
comments?
the only concern that I had a question about.
Very good. Thank you, Rick.
I'll stick to a theme. Do we know what the surface quality is going to be for the trail, as well as that what I would call a sidewalk that basically faces Taylor Way, and then the cut through that goes back to the trail off of Taylor Way and over to phase 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever it's going to be to the east of the bike park. Do we know what that surface is going to be like? Oh, you're muted,
Gary,
Gary.
you're muted. You're muted, Gary. Okay.
Mandy may know more, but I'm just looking at the coloring on the site plan, and it appears that they're looking at it being a similar surface to the existing trail there along the creek.
Okay. Well, I just like to make a note then that the trail that we currently use often has wet spots and so forth. So I hope it'll be a better surface than that, and especially the stretch along Taylor Way, because that's what people are going to use to access the park from their vehicles. And with our weather, especially wintertime weather, that needs to be a really good surface so that it doesn't just turn into a mucky, gross mess for people getting back into their cars, especially after being in the park.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that what we call the trail is not really, wasn't
Right.
really designed as a trail. It's a fire
Nope.
access road that people started using to walk along. So as we're looking at master planning and developing that area, the thought is, that we eventually will turn it into a real trail.
Right.
And it needs to be paved, adequately. It needs to be accessible. It needs to be landscaped. There needs to be, signage and seating, and it actually needs to be turned into an actual recreation space versus just a kind of a bootleg trail that, started
Right.
out as a fire access road. So we're definitely working in that direction.
Okay.
We're looking at a Clean California grant actually right now to look at trail improvements and linkages and lighting. And those linkages can be made through the type of surfacing that you have, the signage network that you have, the landscape patterns that you incorporate. So we're looking at the future, the trail that we know now will have a very different look in the future. And we really want to, enhance it because it is a very frontal feature and amenity for not only the community, but everyone who comes out to Blue Lake to use it. So we definitely are looking at enhancements, and that will be incorporated throughout the full development.
Great. Thank
Okay,
you.
so my question then, what we're looking at on the draft sketch here includes the existing trail or access, emergency access road being part of the construction of this park, that would be improved at least on the confines of the bike park. Is that correct? Am I understanding that correct?
Do you want me to answer that, Gary?
Yeah.
Go for it, yeah.
Okay, yeah, so in looking at this bike, the bike park, I originally, when we looked at it, we really thought that this would be kind of a phased development, and it still may be a phased development. This is going to be a community-driven type of development. It's going to be a project that is going to require people to get out there with shovels and dirt and help build it, and that was really kind of the intention and thought behind this project. Is it's something that the community can really get behind, and as we've gotten further into the project, we've gained more support from not only the community but the other projects that are looking to come into the Taylor Way Powers Creek district. So we're starting to look at ways to enhance this, what started out as kind of just a bike pump track to start out with, now to being more of a recreation feature for the district and the community. As we're looking at like the Danco project and some of the other projects that are of interest, they start to really work well together when we start to plan them in totality. So we start looking at the different connection points. We look at, parking. We look at how people will transition from one facility to the next, how the trail will be used as, an access point, as well as a feature. And as we start to look at those projects, we're starting to see how the different funding sources and development plans can leverage each other. So I anticipate that as we move forward in additional development, additional amenities and features can be built into this facility to make it a nicer development. I see it in the first phase, looking at building the track and getting those facilities and amenities in. And as other developments come in, that may add a bathroom, it may add additional recreation features. Maybe it's a climbing wall or additional benches and seating. It could be a pergola, more lighting, a barbecue space, different features that will all connect the spaces together and just build a much nicer park. So, you don't always go into a project having the funds and the capacity to do everything that you want. And that's why we're trying to look at this as kind of a phased development, but looking at it on a larger landscape. So that we can keep adding features as we go, or as funds are available, or we see the need or the opportunity. So right now we're focusing on the bike pump track, on what we think we can do with the group we have. But as additional projects come forward and start to build the connection to this space, it'll really drive what the features and amenities that come out of it.
Okay. Gary, the question I might have procedural wise here, you're requesting site plan approval, and we don't have this based on what Mandy's saying, and I totally understand phase projects, but the initial design concept and everything, colors and all those kind of things, usually through a site plan approval, at least in my past, gets designed, gets put to bed, I's dotted, T's crossed, all that kind of stuff. And then it might be based on, since this is a city project, and like you're talking about sweat equity from the community, which is a wonderful concept. From that standpoint, could possibly get built in phases, yes, but the overall plan has been completed, maybe for some minor changes along the way that would obviously get incorporated if we learn something new or something better in a better way or better material. All those kind of things all come into play too. But through this process of what we're doing tonight for site plan approval, do we need to be farther along than a conceptual drawing?
I can go ahead and address that. Court looks like he had something he wanted to add as
Go
well.
ahead, Court. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like, it's somewhat similar. So I had a couple of comments and then a question, which is sort of along Earl's line. So, the conceptual plan as illustrated to me is a little vague, and not that I have any problems with it, but I could see that it seems to be, there needs to be some boundaries around that. And some particular things I'm thinking of is, and I brought this up at the last time we talked about this, was lighting, for example. I know that as we get farther along, that's going to be a really big issue for folks across Powers Creek, because it's, it was a big issue when we went through the whole ozone thing. There were comments about that. So I'm just kind of wondering, with the site plan approval stuff and this conceptual design, like, what are the bounds on that? And it's not that I'm 100% supportive of this. I think it's a great thing to do for the community. I think it's nothing but beneficial, but just kind of trying to think of roadblocks that are going to come up along the way. And then I have one comment, but maybe you could answer those things first, Gary, along with Earl's.
Yeah, no, these are good questions. I mean, what you have in front of you on this conceptual site plan, although it may be lacking some, particular detail that you might see in more, finalized plans, there's enough here to generally understand what's being proposed where, the footprint, the type of, structures and grading and these kind of things are going to happen. Typically what happens a lot of times is the planning commission approves site plan approval. There's almost always some modifications made by developers. They're typically minor. However, if they're substantial, we do have the ability to send it back to the planning commission and say, this is drastically different from, what they considered and what was approved. They need to see this again.
And what's that line?
So basically, if they wanted to expand the footprint, if they wanted to add significant facilities, structures that weren't previously considered, if they want to just like redesign the whole thing, stuff like that. So those are the things we consider. If there's major elements that are being added to the project that weren't previously considered, that's kind of the threshold for sending it back to the Planning Commission. So a lot of the things that Mandy mentioned, I see as more minor amendments to, what you see here. Obviously, final grading design plans are going to have to be developed, construction plans, they'll need grading permits, building permits. It'll be reviewed and approved by city engineer and public works and other staff. And through that process, if we see something that we're like, this is markedly different than what was considered by the Planning Commission, we would send it back. So that's typically how we deal with that. Now, another consideration is Mandy mentioned other future developments that may contribute to this. So, some of these elements that we're talking about that you don't see on the site plan, you would potentially see on future site plans for some of those developments. We would incorporate that in there. It's very possible that mixed use developments proposed next door will contribute to development of this or to later phases of this bike park. And they're going to need to show that on their site plan that's brought to the Planning Commission as part of their conditional use permit and their site plan approval application. So anyway, that's kind of a quick explanation just of what our threshold is for, significant changes to a site plan approval application. You also brought up the issue of lighting. And as you guys are probably aware, there's kind of strict lighting standards in the opportunity zone, requiring them to follow the International Dark Sky Association requirements. And that means they have to do a lighting plan. We need to know where the lights are going to be, how tall they're going to be, what lumens are going to be, are they going to be shielded according to IDA recommendations? And that would have to be reviewed and approved by city staff, because obviously there was a lot of concern about ambient lighting from these developments over there. So this project would go through the same process that any other development would need to go through in regards to lighting.
Okay. Great, thank you. And then I just had one comment that I'd just like to interject. I would really like to see that trail along Powers Creek developed as a permeable, improved surface and not a paved bike path. I think it would really be just aesthetically beneficial, and Powers Creek doesn't really need any more impermeable area contributing to its flow. It's got enough. And so that's just obviously my opinion coming from my background. And so, if at all possible, I'd really like to see that developed as an improved permeable surface and not impermeable.
Andy, are you putting together, is there a committee group through Trevor and Emily's purview in regards to getting local input like that on that final design and those kind of subjects? Do you know that someone like Court might want to get involved in?
For the trail improvements?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it also comes down to what your source of funding is as well.
Right.
Like the Annie and Mary Trail, there's specific ADA requirements and inclusivity requirements that we have to meet in order to, qualify for funding. And I think it's important. And there's ways that you can incorporate, those design standards in a way that, that takes into the consideration those same concerns. But it gets very tricky when you start taking state and federal funds and you can't show your accessibility. So if someone is in a wheelchair or has those disabilities and we're creating a public pathway that's not accessible, we not only won't get funded, but we also start to subject ourselves to some legal ramifications as well. So I think there's new materials, there's new surfacing opportunities to take that into consideration, and there's different permeability standards that that we can, and thresholds that we can look at for sure. But we do have to take that into consideration when we're looking at these spaces. And I think, for myself, it was a real eye opener for me to see the new park in Arcata that's an inclusive park and has recreation facilities specifically for, individuals that have disabilities or that may be, in a wheelchair, to see them have a swing set that's specifically designed for them to access. That was a huge eye opener for me when I look at our own recreation spaces and see just how, see the barriers that our current recreations present to people with disabilities. And it's something that I think I want to push for really push it to the forefront. And I know Trevor's got a pretty strong background in that same issue. It's not only the right thing to do, it's also a huge opportunity for us as a community to be a place where everyone has the capacity to enjoy our recreation spaces. So it's something that we just are going to have to think about and figure out ways to work within those parameters.
And that can be accomplished without paving something. I mean,
Absolutely,
yeah.
I'm sure it can. Is your design team already set? And the person that, or the firm that put the sketch together?
So the design for the bike track came from the Redwood Coast Mountain Biking Association.
Right.
So they have some engineers that are volunteers on their in their group. So this does have some engineering behind it already, which we're really lucky to have that level of detail. And when we did look at designing it, we said throw in a space for a bathroom, throw in a space for water bottle filling station, so that we can really look at it. Because the worst thing is to build something and then have to come back and tear it up and like, oh, why didn't I plan for that? It doesn't mean necessarily that we're going to be able to get it the first go around, but we wanted to include this infrastructure so that we have placeholders and we have something to work towards, and then we can see how things work together. And as we're looking at some of the other development projects, we've been looking at it in the same respect. Where could shared parking go? There's a great opportunity to have some parking as part of the mixed use development that would also be parking for this space as well. So, so we have to look at this on kind of a larger landscape so we don't mess it up. I mean, we're probably going to mess up something and go like, ugh, I wish we, had done it a little bit differently, but we are trying to be pretty comprehensive in our approach to all of the development.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, it's super exciting. I'm glad it's moving forward. I think it's like one of the best. I don't know. It's just very exciting. It's an awesome addition, potential awesome addition.
Charlie, do you have some comment?
Yeah, what I wanted to share is in our discussion today, just even moving dirt in, one of our bigger concerns is making sure even the haul path of moving dirt in, that we're taking care of the surrounding soils and everything so that we aren't causing a problem or a water hole. And Court, one of the things that I was thinking of when you were talking about keeping that penetrable surface is there are ways of doing that by putting in a structure and then backfilling over that structure with your materials, so you have a good wheelchair access and you still have that nice gravel road or gravel path. And I kind of see that all the way around the bike park. The only thing we're talking about paving eventually is the pump track once it gets itself set in. But the surrounding area around it, if we can keep it normal trails, I mean, I think that's kind of where everybody's at.
Okay, great.
So anyway, that's just my 2 cents on from the group I've been working with. We do have a good engineer that has done a lot of the work. We were today when we were talking about getting ready is making sure all of our bases for where the pump track's going to be, where the hill for the jump track's going to be, making sure we have good base material all under that before we put the surface material on top of it. So all of that has been considered, but it's probably not detailed out in the drawings you have right now.
Right. Yeah. The engineer, yeah, the city engineer and everybody involved in approval. Final approval is going to want all that info. Obviously, that's part of the process. Very good, Charlie. Thank you. Commissioners, any other comments or questions?
Nope.
Okay, all right. Then we have a resolution, I think, here, Gary, attached.
Yeah, you've
Yeah,
got a
so,
resolution 5/2021 is attached there.
Well, it sounds like we want a consensus here to, and now we'll take it to a vote, looking for to move forward on this. Do I hear some an approval?
Motion
of
to
this?
approve.
Yeah, motion to approve. Go ahead, Matt.
Oh, yeah, I motion to approve.
All right. Do I hear a second?
I'll
Sure,
second
I'll
it.
second it.
Okay, very good, Court. All right,
I got you.
Court,
All right.
you got it. Good job.
all
dude.
right. Very good. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, I think that was Rick talking. Mandy,
It's really enthusiastic.
go to my previous conversation, Mandy. Now it's on Rick. So, okay, very good. Well, this passes then from that standpoint. I think, I know myself and my fellow commissioners seem to be pretty excited about it. Hopefully
Yep.
the project, the community gets really involved in it because that'll really, the buy-in will be great from that standpoint. And it'll be a headliner for the city. So I think it's an exciting process, from that standpoint. And so go forward and let us know where we can help along the way. So, all right.
Your shovels.
Okay, terrific. All right, on to the next agenda item. Item 6, miscellaneous planner items. We got anything, Gary or Mandy?
I don't. Is there anything you wanted to discuss, Mandy?
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank, so I guess no.
Okay, all right, very good. Next has to do with the next meetings, the next 3 months. December, obviously, we're coming into the holidays. From that standpoint, I'd ask the commissioners to look at their calendar, whatnot. We have done special meetings in the past too, so that's not a big challenge either. So we usually can get a quorum together. So
I will be out of town for the 20th of December. I know that for a fact right now.
okay, Matt. All right. Anybody else know their schedule well enough to?
I should be here. My in-laws are coming for Christmas. So my guess is it'll be a big family thing during that time. So I'll be here.
Terrific. All right. I'm
The
pretty
next
well.
time I'm planning on being out of town is like President's Week in February, but that's a ways off. So
Okay. All right. Well, I'm probably going to be around, so not a problem from that standpoint. Okay, good. All right. Next item on the agenda is a,
I
Adjournment
move to
of the meeting.
adjourn.
go ahead. I'll second that. All right. So all in favor?
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
All right. So moved. Thank you, Andy, especially you. Thank you for your
Yeah.
hard work on this bike track. I'm excited about it.
Yep.
yeah, super
Cool.
exciting stuff.
Yeah,
Very
that's,
cool,
that's the
very
kind of
cool.
excitement that brings to our community, the things that you're working on, and hopefully that moves faster than you can imagine. So, all
Yep.
right, and Trevor, welcome to the gang, and
Yep.
looking forward to meeting you in town one day. And it's nice to, I know what you look like without a mask. I'll have to figure it out when I see you next.
Okay, yeah,
Okay,
thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
you betcha.
Yeah, you bet.
All right, Emily, you too. All right, take care. Talk to
Good
you
night,
later.
everyone.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
Bye.
bye.